movie people, welcome back to the channel. I'm the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon, and here I'm taking you on a trip through getting Act 3 of my free, not safe for work webcomic, Dark Horse, printed. I've made mistakes in the past that have cost me a lot of money, so my hopes with this series is to help others avoid the same mistakes that I made and maybe teach you something, but mostly to give you inspiration and encourage you to learn how to print your own comic, your own indie comic. So let's go get started.
Well, maybe we can work it out.
In this week's video, we're going to touch upon researching local print shops, getting quotes, and choosing a printer. Some print options to keep in mind, weight, finishing, etc., etc., as well as a little bit about budgets and being firm. You can do a lot of things in order to research a local print company or a brick and mortar print company, one that you can actually go into and talk to human beings. One way you can do it is just a general search in whatever search engine you use. I use Ecosia because they plant trees. You could just go straight to Yelp. You could go do a Google search. You could do, is it DuckDuckGo? There's a DuckDuckGo also. I don't know much about it. My partner uses it. You can read reviews, check out websites. If you don't see what you want on the websites, which you'll see, I'm going to check out a couple and show you, just generally speaking, how to look for things. But if you don't like what you see, you can call them and ask them whether or not they make what you're trying to print, which would be like a booklet. The worst they'll say is no, or they don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I get that quite often. I wonder why. You can look it up in the yellow pages, find something local, or if you prefer to, you may also do this online. I'm not going to walk you through where to find online print-on-demand companies because I don't have any experience in it other than my bad experience with Ex Libris. But I do have friends. They printed this kids poetry book. I illustrated this. I would like to, for a Christmas present, redo these drawings for them. Some of them are okay, but I would like to redo the formatting and just give it to them as a gift. But they actually were able to do this online on Amazon. So you can do it, but if you're going to do it online, make sure that you're carefully following their instructions for layout, especially if you do want your pages to have bleed. I think it's really cute how she did the back. She just took some elements from the cover and did that. So she's pretty good with her own design. If you're going to do it online, make sure that your page layout follows their stipulations very closely so that it doesn't turn out wrong from what you want. Because when it's online, it's going to be, you don't get to handle the proof, I assume. Maybe you do. I don't know. I did get proofs, which I'll talk a little bit about later, from Ex Libris. God, that was an awful experience. That's a story time video in and of itself. But just make sure you're careful if you're doing it online. The other thing is, if you're going to go through Amazon, be very, very careful. It might be a good idea to get your copyright first. Read all of the small print on any place that's going to sell your comic for you. I know I have a friend who works just in the warehouse of Amazon, and the stuff that's even what I read when I was thinking of going on Comixology, I felt very uncomfortable with the idea of the low profit that I get from it. I mean, granted, they are going to be promoting it. I understand that kind of cost that they incur and take out, but there were some dicey things in there that I personally didn't agree with or felt comfortable with. So if you do go online with someone like Amazon, make sure you read that small print carefully, and I would say get your copyright first, which I'm not doing that in this video. That's going to be next week's video, but that's just me. I mean, it's my shit. It's shit, but it's my shit. And, you know, I like to own my shit, even though I like to share it for free. I also like to own it, so it's mine. I like to bask in the glow of my own shit. As you can tell, the fact that I keep pulling these up every video. I can't wait till I have a third one. Then I have 3 of these that I can pull up on the video and show off. I'm just kidding. Okay, let's get this moving along. Okay, I've opened a couple options near me, and what I'm doing is checking their options to see online what types of items they offer for print and to see if they offer anything that I'm looking for. Some of the websites I looked at seem to only offer banners or signs. That's not what I'm looking for. Others had the option of booklets or pamphlets, and that's usually the format that I'm usually looking for, since my booklets are similar to the Western monthly comic books, kind of thinner, flimsier pages, although I do use a heavier paper than some of the old school comic books that I used to look at. Once I found a printer I think is promising, then I move on to requesting a quote, or estimate, I mean the same thing. So let's go ahead and move on to that step. So let's pretend we're going to request a quote. Some places want it emailed, some want it uploaded via their website. Some, like Fry Williamson Press in Springfield, Illinois, circa 2009, 2008-ish, around that time, 2007, they have a personal FTP site. You need to get a password from them to upload onto their actual site. FTP just means file transfer protocol. It's different than a regular website. This is not a video about FTP sites though, so I'm not going to go into detail about it. But there are different ways of uploading your product, either for the quote or just how they want it so that they can print it. I'm just going to get a quote from Minuteman Press because I've worked with them before and their site is pretty straightforward. This is just to give you an idea. You may want to get your copyright first before this step also, but you will fill out the form. So you put your name, your email address, whatever. If you have a business name, which I do, I put Blue Dragon Art, my name, phone number, email address, all that good stuff. And then in the description, try to be as descript as possible. I really do try to be as descript as possible. And since I've been through this process before, I used the Minuteman Press's quote just as my description because I figure it's probably going to be the same from one Minuteman Press to another. But if not, I always say, hey, give me a shout if you have any questions, because even though I am as descript as possible, I'm still Word of Wednesday inchoate. I don't know how I manage it. How have I made it to adulthood, you guys? I say so much and yet I say so little. Anyway, once you fill out all the required information, you upload whatever file it is you want printed. In this case, I wanted the Act 3 printed from Dark Horse. And then you hit send. I go over to my email because you should get an email confirmation. And if they have any questions, they will email back and forth. And that's a way that you can communicate with your printers if you really feel uncomfortable on the telephone, which I hate phones, but I prefer to take care of business on the phone. That's what I use my phone for, is for business. I talk to a handful of people who are my friends, but usually it's like dead air space. You'd never know. Like if I'm in person, I babble like I do in these videos. It's awful. Anyway, moving along. You don't want to hear me deprecate myself. Okay, in this part of the video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of doing a bit of research and getting quotes from your printers, as well as talking a little bit about proofs and finishing. So, I personally like to use local printers, or at least places where I can physically stop in. Minuteman Press is actually a national company, but I feel like it's like a franchise because these people actually sent a Christmas card or something, a holiday card, at the end of last year, 2019. So, you know, I feel like if I can actually talk to the printers and walk in there, we can hold conversations. For me personally, I prefer that type of interaction with someone who's handling something that I am printing and, you know, forking over hundreds of dollars for. So if you decide you're going to print your comic, it might behoove you to get a couple estimates. For Act 1, I did not go with Minutemen Press. Although their quote was cheaper, they had quoted this, you know, front and back. It would be 10 pages total, like, just one of these would be about 10 pages front and back. So 20. Am I confusing? But they gave me a quote of around $300 at the time of this quote, which was 2019. An actual locally owned place quoted it for much more expensive. However, in some cases, you want to think, you know, I'm going to get what I pay for. And for this being my first experience, I decided to go with NJC Printing. They ended up doing a good job. I should have been talking directly to the person doing the layout, because there were mistakes that were made that could have been avoided, and they were going to try to charge me for it, which is why I like to do this in person, so that I'm face to face with someone, and it's much harder for somebody to want to screw you over when you're face to face and can talk to each other. But that said, I still had a fairly good experience, and even though I didn't get Act 2 printed with this company, they did my banners. I did 2 banners for the convention last year. They did an amazing job, and even, again, it wasn't even that bad of an experience, but I really had to put my foot down, and, you know, you gotta know how to stand up for yourself when you're working with anybody, which I did not do very well with Ex Libris the second time that I printed. You've got to be prepared to, if they have good advice, to take it, but if they don't, if you think they're just trying to sell you something, you need to present yourself with confidence and not back down. If you want something you are paying this much money for, you need to stand up for yourself and say, no, this is what I want. I appreciate your experience, but you also need to respect my point of view. So, but I went with them, and they still did a great job. I have absolutely no complaints at all with the finished product. They did everything is, you know, how I wanted it. In some cases, I actually had made a mistake. I didn't have, like, all the text within the safety, so we were able to work together, and the reason why we were able to find out what was and wasn't within the safety was because after getting the estimates, I chose a company, and I requested proofs. Now, NJC was nice because they do not charge you for the proof, whereas Minutemen Press, they do charge you for the proof. Me personally, I prefer a hard copy proof, because they might send you a PDF document back as the proof, which is what happened with Minutemen Press when I went in for my second one. But having the hard copy one is going to be what enables you to actually take a look at what it's going to look like when it's completed. So this part of the video, I want to talk a bit about the proofs. I did not get proofs for this one. These guys sent me my first proof, and they had it, even though I sent them a hard copy of what it was supposed to look like, they still have it in completely wrong order. You open up the book, this is the back of the book. So this is what I'm talking about. You need to make sure you get a proof. You can do it online if you're not going to work locally. You can get a proof online, but they sent me a proof online, and I still requested a hard copy, and they done fucked up. But anyway, that's the importance of having a proof, because then you can see, oh, you're doing this wrong. You can see what you don't like. This time round, things had a slight hiccup. The person in the back, I did not have this outline here, but they thought that I was supposed to, because some of the pages had outlines. They were confused on, you know, if it was supposed to have an outline or not. So if I didn't have this proof, they might have printed 150 versions of this, and it would be wrong, and I would just be stuck with the wrong version. So another good example of why you need a proof. But the other thing is, not only were these proofs free from them, so again, they were the local ones. I had a little bit of a hiccup, but overall I'm happy with their service, which is why I kept going with them for some other stuff. But at the same time that they were having me look at the proof, they're like, well, now here's a couple different paper options you have. So this is the heavy paper. I don't remember if this is the 80 pound. This is definitely a heavier paper. I feel like this is the 80 pound. And then this lighter weight one, which is what I went with because it was cheaper. But they showed me both options. You know, this one, I don't know if you guys can see or not, but you can definitely hear. Versus... that's much lighter, so they'll give you the option of the different paper weights. So that's something that you will need to decide. Thinner the paper, cheaper it's going to be, probably, unless they're like trying to get rid of stuff. If you end up with a good relationship with your printer and keep using the same people, they're gonna want to do things for you because you're building up that relationship with them, and they're gonna want to keep you as a client. So that's another reason why I really like working with local printers, because I feel almost that they value your patronage better than some of the online places like Amazon. They don't give a fuck. The local printers, you know that you're working with people in your community, so you're supporting your local community. You might have to pay a little bit more, but you know, you might also be paying for a little bit better quality and having more hands-on interaction. Now, of course, during COVID, you're not going to probably be meeting face-to-face with your printers, but what they're going to do is they're going to give you a lot of different options. So in addition to paper weights, Minuteman Press had another option for binding. So this is, when you go in there, they're going to ask you how you want it bound, the binding. I do saddle stitch because this is not a very thick act. But whenever I go to get like volume 1 done, I'm going to want it to be perfect bound, which is like this. Perfect bound is like when you buy a regular book. It doesn't have a staple. So this is saddle stitched, but they asked me if I wanted this to be flat, which this other company doesn't do. It's kind of rounded, which is fine for my purposes. But if you have this flat, it stacks a little better. You can choose between what kind of binding you want. These are things that you're going to have to think about whenever you're getting your books printed. In addition to the size, you're also going to be thinking about the finishing. Whether you want this to be glossy or semi-gloss. You can either do glossy or matte. It's the same thing with paper, just like with a photograph. They'll give you those options for your cover. You can even have the cover be of a heavier weight than the inside if you want. Eventually, once you're finished with your proof, you're going to have to decide how many you want. When you work with your printer, the more books that you print off, the cheaper each individual book is. Personally, for my needs, I'm willing to pay a little bit more per book, not in bulk, just so that I don't have a ton of stock that I'm not going to be selling. So that's something else that you as a creator and as a seller are going to have to decide. But yeah, make sure that you're working within your budget. Before you even get involved in any of this, go into it thinking, how much do I want to sell these books for? How much do I realistically think I'm going to be able to get for these? But yeah, take that into account, you know, how much you're going to want to charge, and make sure that when you're getting them printed that you're taking that, you know, you're keeping the profit in mind as well as how much the cost is. So thank you all for watching. The question of the week is, do you prefer full color or black and white comics, or maybe a combination of both? I personally have an appreciation for any style. Black and white comics that I like. Mouse was really good. I don't have a copy of that because I checked it out from the library, but it was very good. All black and white, aside from the covers. Most of the manga that I read, by the time I get a hold of it, it's black and white, because a lot of times they'll have first printing that has color pages in it. There's another one by Clamp that does that. But you can see then it goes into black and white, and this is all inked. There's no screen toning. Sayuki actually is the one that influenced me to do this first, though. This is Reload, but I love this Sayuki series. Color pages in here. Pretty boys. Ooh. Pretty tough boys. But I also like just black and white books. This is an indie author that I absolutely adore. Flipside. I'm trying to get them all. 10 is the latest one, but I've actually gotten, look, 10? Ooh, I got a little sketch. I won this from a contest on his forum. And then this is the latest one. Another sketch and a signature because it was late. My fault, not his. He was super cool about the whole deal. God, I'm a hot mess, you guys. But I do also love color comics. I like Sandman by Neil Gaiman with various artists is, generally speaking, a full color comic that I just adore. I really, really want to reread it. I personally don't care if the comic is in color or black and white. If the art is not too confusing, if I can tell what's going on and the story is good, I can do any combination of color, black and white, or both. Terra Prima is a really lovely full color webcomic that I highly, highly recommend. It updates on a weekly basis. The artist keeps pushing to improve, and you can really see the growth and dynamicism? Is that a word? I don't know. Correct yourself up in But anyway, if you like sci-fi comics that are very well written with a lot of different characters, parallel dimensions, there's a very large cast, but in spite of being a large cast, the personality is individual. It's very well written, is what I'm saying. You know, sometimes all the characters are the same and there's a billion of them, but these characters are very individual and they're very diverse backgrounds, diverse personalities. Very, very well written on that aspect. It's got parallel dimensions. I highly recommend it if you like that kind of thing. Terra Prima on Topis. Link down in the... Whoa, that's a weird way to put my hand. Link down in the description. This other hand's just like, I'm hanging out. Anyway, self-promotion time. If you like my comics or these videos and have some spare cash or credits or woolongs lying around, you can send them my way on a regular basis at Patreon or Subscribestar, or you can drop some Ko-fi, and it is pronounced Ko-fi, in my cup. I can't imagine that money tastes good. Ew, don't put money in your mouth. That's disgusting. Ew. Yeah, Ko-fi, PayPal, my shop, you can buy shit from me. That's awesome. I suck at the begging for money part. But if you want to do any of that stuff, the description has tons of links. I'm really bad at begging, but I'm great at giving you links to give me money. But yeah, otherwise, you know, you can like, sub, do the bell thing. I do plan to animate that bell soon. And by soon, I mean hopefully this year. Don't expect too much from me. You might not be let down. God, I'm such a 90s kid. As much as I'm a 60s wannabe, I'm really a 90s kid. Peace and love. Fare you well, and keep on trucking.